Keep 100% of your claim. G4 Claims.
If you've been hurt in a road accident that wasn't your fault, you should really talk to G4 Claims first. Unlike road accident solicitors, we don't charge you for our services, which could see you better off. To keep 100% of your compensation, have a chat with Nicole and the team. You'll be glad you did. Search online for G4 Claims.
Keep 100% of your claim. G4 Claims.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Sellik, the Thunder, where today I am joined by a very familiar face, at least if you're in the Ryan 118 live streams, because this man is always here causing it. It's from the man from Celtic here himself, the legend, that is Quinny. Quinny, how you doing, sir? It's nice to... Well, I'm not going to lie, it's not exactly nice, the circumstances that we're in here, but it's nice to have you on. How you doing this Friday afternoon, mate?
I'm good, and I would echo the feeling. Nice to be hanging out with you this afternoon to chat some Celtic. Sadly, not the best circumstances to do it under, but yeah, these days, if you're waiting for a good opportunity, it would never happen, would it?
It's just, it's typical of the season. I mean, I wasn't coming on here today to expected to be all smiles and laughing and jolly about things. I had a feeling that it would go this direction. For anybody who might not know, or nobody will know really, I've not exactly shared this story publicly, but last night I was driving home and Quinny messaged me, like, after the game. I just seen the DM pop through, like, if you're going live, I'll be happy to join you. And I was like, you're feeling the same way as me. Are you just the same? But Quinny, did you have a lot to get off your chest today?
Oh yeah, big time. Especially leave it. I went to the game. I made a bit of a point of, I kind of came to the realisation about a week or two ago is I hadn't been to a game since O'Neill came back.
Right.
Not another penny and the boycotts and all that stuff. Like I want to support as much of stuff as I can, of course. But I thought a European game under the floodlights, a knockout game, February, Martin O'Neill, it's a 1000th game. How can I not go? So I was going in with that, and then see when I was leaving, like it just couldn't have been any further away. Like
so much
a
regret.
lifetime had passed. Yeah, like everything had
It's just
happened.
It's sad then, and I guess we will come on to that, but I get you, because like there was a feeling going into last night, and the way that I worded it was, I wasn't getting carried away expecting Celtic to pull off the miracle or to win or whatever, but I had a feeling of optimism about me. And as you said, the kind of stars were aligning in the sense, Martin O'Neill's 1000th game, we'd played Stuttgart in 2003, we had really turned around a sinking ship in Europe this season with Martin O'Neill. It felt like there was maybe something magic in the air, and then that happened. So it was quite deflating for me coming home, and the reason that I didn't go live last night was because I felt like if I went live directly after that game, I would have said some horrendous things. And I was like, do you know what? I'll try and reserve myself. I'll be a little bit more cool, calm and collected about it. And I feel like you'll help me bring out the best in that, Quinny. I feel like you'll maybe kind of flare the tempers a wee bit, just bring it down.
I'll do my best for sure, but I was definitely definitely had a lot to get off my chest. I was really upset coming out the game from the football perspective, and then the post match, everything that kind of unfolded. Even I was up until 1:30 in the morning. I was a bit wired after the game, as you normally are sometimes, but especially with all the kind of online developments thereafter, I just honestly, it just went from bad to worse really from full time, and. So I was definitely feeling that way, and like yourself, I was kind of like, I don't know if I'll have energy in myself to go live, but I thought if I go home or I'm on my way home and Ryan's live, I'll probably end up jumping into the live chat, and I'd end up, so I was like, I'll just send him a wee message, and if he's live and I get to my desk in time, it could be an interesting night. But so thanks for getting back to me all the same, and last night probably wouldn't have been best advice, would it?
It's a pleasure to have you, mate, honestly. And I said a moment ago, flare my tempers. I might say calm my tempers. I mean, if you flared them, we'd probably end up in a bad situation right here. But thank you. And make sure that everybody to go and check out Quinny's stuff. You can find it all over YouTube. It's good to have him on. It's good to have it's the same when we had Tino on a couple of weeks ago. Nice to have some different opinions, some different voices. Kieran, Calum, Dylan, they're all busy at work. So a nice wee change up today, shall we? We just get tucked into it, I suppose. Let's start off with our general thoughts to last night, our general and initial reactions. Disappointing. Celtic 1, Stuttgart 4. I mean, I would go as far to say that that's the tie done already, unless God himself gets a game next week at Stuttgart. I really don't see a way back for Celtic, but hey-ho. your initial thoughts, Quinny. We've already touched on the initial disappointment, but beyond that, is it worse than you thought it could have got last night?
Yeah, I do think so, because I kind of mentioned it in my own previews. I've watched Stuttgart twice this season, just by pure coincidence, and it was like a few months ago, so it's maybe a wee bit dated in terms of the form and where the team was at. But both games, they were grade A terrible. I watched them play Fenerbahce in Europa, and I watched them play Leipzig in Bundes, and they were bad, But obviously, you can't take like 2 games and think, oh, well,
Yeah.
And very good opposition as well, of course. But I was kind of, again, equally going into the game thinking that they are like when you look at the results we've had with even this season, Feyenoord and Bologna and whatnot, like a team that we could get after, we could maybe get something out of. And having watched them in person live, like, I think athleticism, they were on another level altogether, like their whole team, just and even a bit of like cohesion, the football IQ the team had was very, very, very clever. But the main thing for me was just like really how abject, how like far off it we were in terms of just matching them up. They were kind of they were kind of weird. You were at the game as well. I know you're at the game every week, obviously.
That's right.
And the boys, with European games, there's always a big name on the opposition you're kind of, as a fan, looking forward to see. And I think for a lot of people, it was the boy Stiller. And honestly, Angelo Stiller, and that's the first time I've seen him in person or paid super close attention to him. But he is everything that McGregor thinks he is or wants to be, or Brendan Rodgers convinced him that he is. He wasn't just getting in deep and getting the ball off the centre-backs, but he was going forward. He was like artillery, he was just pinging balls out into forward areas. And I was expecting us to be way more competitive against them. And I don't think that's a player thing and how much money the Premier League spends on transfers. I think it was a big game plan missing from the team. It did, because of that, it did feel way worse than just losing 4-1 or getting beat off of somebody in this type of game, because like, I don't feel that we really gave it a good go, really. I don't think that we really went after them properly.
No, I mean, it's hard to argue any of that. I mean, I don't want to keep using the same old cliched sayings and the phrases that we use constantly when we get battled off these European sides, but it really did feel like men against boys for the majority of the game. Stuttgart were... I mean, if you're asking my honest assessment of it, and I didn't really get into the footballing side of it last night, I think my initial match reaction was more just about the feeling or the big picture coming out of the game. So in terms of actual football, like, Stuttgart didn't really feel like they got out of second gear for me, and I feel like I had a few Stuttgart fans comment on my video last night, and I seen a few on Twitter as well saying the same thing. Like, that was far from their best, and yet they dog walked us. They made it look so routine, so easy, and it felt like we were an amateur side coming up against a team that ultimately just felt organised. And the one thing that I said, especially when Wilfred Nancy was here and there was so much unorganisation and there was maybe more of an organised chaos around the team, the thing that worried me most about Rangers was that it felt like an organised side could do anything to beat Celtic right now. And what we saw was a super organised side under a manager who's been there for 2-3 years, very much got a strong cohesion amongst his group of players. And we just didn't know how to handle that. We talk about Celtic struggling to play against a low block domestically. Stuttgart had this high press at Celtic Park yesterday, and we couldn't play against that. So you can't play against a low block, can't play against a high press. Then what can you do? It just feels like we aren't organised or drilled to come up against anything right now. And yeah, I mean, you brought up the 2 games that you've seen. You could say fortunately or unfortunately, I was subject to a couple of games that were the exact opposite. So I watched the Stuttgart and Freiburg game from a few weeks ago, and I think the final score was 1-0 if I remember. But they absolutely battered them, Quinny. It was like it was 1 going on 5. And Freiburg are a top team. They've been one of the better sides in Germany these last few years. I believe they're in the Europa League as well. And Stuttgart made it look like child's play. And watching that game, I knew this could happen to Celtic. But I had more faith that we could face them on Europe. I mean, we've seen how organised we were against Bologna, especially when we had 10 men. We saw what we were able to do against Feyenoord. And then I'm starting to think to myself, was that because Feyenoord were a club in crisis? Is that because we maybe came across a wee bit of luck in Bologna? I don't know, but last night just had me doubting a lot of the good things I've been able to say since Martin O'Neill's come back.
Yeah, it did kind of throw some doubt into my head, but I'm not too sure precisely where it comes from or what it's aimed at, because, like I say, for me, like, a bit of this Martin O'Neill era, especially with Sean Maloney and Fotheringham also having a hand on the wheel, was it did feel like we were getting a better tune out of Engels. The first time O'Neill came in, we got a really good tune out of Hatate for a few weeks, and Negren and Yang and Tuneki. Some of these guys are developing and doing better. And what we seen last night was like 5 steps backwards for I'd probably say that like the collective, I don't think individually anyone really played super bad in that way. You know, I think it was just everyone was lost at sea, really. It was kind of rudderless boats everywhere. Nobody really knew where to go. And I say that was probably the thing that really, I still, with the match itself, I cannot shake. Like, Martin O'Neill said pre-match somewhere that we've had scouts in Germany watching Stuttgart in person for a couple of games and whatever. And I can't imagine, and Martin O'Neill went on to say they didn't tell him anything that he'd not seen himself on the screen, you know, watching it from Glasgow or whatever. But I don't know how you could watch that Stuttgart team and then set up the way we did to like let them have their own half of the pitch, and like again to get into all the kind of football kind of like the tactics and all the kind of mad nerdy stuff about it, but we just absolutely let them have the way of the pitch. And Bernardo coming into the game, I thought was probably the guy you want to replace Engels physically. You know, like just do what Engels does. You know, stand next to McGregor, try and play some balls forward, give nothing away. But we played him in the like Hatate job. He was going up and down, left and right. He was never like set in position, and nobody wanted to pass to him. You know, and it was. I just couldn't believe the plan that we came in with, and we tried. It wasn't even until half time we started man marking the midfield, and by that time it was too late. They were pulling us apart, and yeah, as I say, that was my overall thing with the actual football part of it. I just couldn't believe how like we didn't have a plan, and no one on the pitch took the initiative of like reading the game a bit. You know, it was like it felt like, you know, at outfield you had 10 statues at times of the game. Like I was genuinely questioning what was going on, both on and off the ball. Like whether we were in possession or whether Stuttgart had a long spell of possession. Felt like we had 10 statues, and you used the word rudderless. Yeah, I mean it basically summed it up. And I think the more frustrating thing is the first 15 minutes or so. I actually thought, right, okay, right, we look fine. We responded really well to Stuttgart getting a goal, which was, you know, by nobody else's fault really other than a calamitous goalkeeping error, and he would responded well, and I thought, and then just after that it was almost like we wanted nothing to do with the game, and suddenly every bit of quality that we had was gone. If you could stretch it as far as saying it was quality, I don't know. But what's more, even more frustrating is if you, and I hate constantly having to revert back to previous games, previous months, and living in the past, because it's all about moving forward. But, you know, a Celtic team that I think this time a year ago would have been ambitious in the game, would have took risks, and certainly would have maybe given it more of a physical, had more of a physical battle in the game, challenged the game a wee bit more. Just felt like all of that was gone, Quinny. And I don't know where that sort of came from. I don't know if that's just lack of confidence. I don't know if it's lack of structure. But all of the things that were there with a majority of the same squad a year ago, yeah, we could talk about missing such and such, and that is a big part of it. In fact, it's probably one of the biggest parts of it. You still wonder what's happened to, you know, guys like McGregor, who's been here for the best part of a decade. You wonder what's happened to the likes of Trusty and Scales, who were here this time last year. You wonder what's happened to all these other guys. Like, where is it all gone? Because last night, after that 15-minute mark, as I said, it just felt like we went into our shells and it was an unrecognisable unit of a Celtic team. Yeah, it's hard to kind of pinpoint in that sense. Like, I actually left the game thinking, like, I think McGregor is... Like, I don't think he's like getting worse as in he's playing poorer, but he's not getting better as a player in that position.
You're right.
Like we know he's not that defensive mid guy, but he's been playing there for 3 or 4 years. And I had a guy sit next to me, and it was a pure trope, like a pure fake thing that happens when you go to football games. Is you sit next to this old guy who has been going to Celtic Park forever, and they make fun of the back passing. I was sitting next to that guy, you know, and it was beyond parody at times. You know, it was like. And he was really ripping it out of the team. He was like, back to the halfway line, you know, and off it would go. And
do you know what? I've been turning into that guy this season. Yeah. By the way. That is now me. I have morphed into my final form, mate.
But like, let's say there's no. And again, McGregor's the one. One of my favourite players. I know he's one of your favourites as well.
Of course,
especially current times as well. And you look at him on the pitch and you think you're the one that. Especially after the first goal, like the way the first goal kind of opens up is kind of mainly the way most of them do, where they do a really good job, Stuttgart, of getting like their whole front line behind McGregor on the midfield. And as soon as that kind of space, you know, that space hurts us in Europe all the time, and that's when people talk about McGregor and we need a Wanyama. That's when all that stuff comes out. But how after that first goal goes in, he doesn't grab Bernardo and say, "You're fucking standing next to me for 10 minutes." You know, and we're just going to shore this up now because this space, they're getting it, we're going to... And, I'll totally forgive them. You mentioned it already, how well organised they were. Anyone who was at the game, see if you were really trying to suss out Stuttgart, it really took like 10 minutes to figure out where they were, who was where, what they were up to. So I give anyone the grace of the first 10-15 minutes of the match. But by the time the first goal goes in, nobody's like grabbing the game a bit and going, do you know what? That right back is basically up front. So why don't we just put both the wingers there for 5 minutes? And Bernardo, how about you just sit in front of the defence with me for 2 minutes, and and then if we get the ball, blindly hit it out there, because we'll have two wingers and we'll do something. And there's none of that. It's just everyone get back to your positions and go again. Pass to me and I'll pass to you, and he'll pass to me, and then we'll run, and then we'll give it away. And the man next to you has a laugh about it.
It's scary how accurate it actually is, because I was saving this for later. I have like a wee mini running order, and I was going to save talking about like system shape, blah blah blah, until a wee bit later on. But now that you've brought it up, it's probably a nice time to transition into it. This is separate from talking about system and tactics for a minute, but the midfield three in particular, there seems to be like a cowardly aspect to the three of them right now. Like, especially when we're defending the game, they just don't work well together. There's not an ounce of bravery in there. I feel like it's just they were running over us last night, and it's not the first time it's happened to us. Like, any sort of midfield combination trumps ours tenfold, runs over them, and we don't know how to deal with it. And now I'm thinking to myself, Quinny, from here to the rest of the season, I've always been, and you've been in enough of my streams to probably have heard me say this a number of times, I'm not going to use the word paranoid, but I'm very cautious about changing an entire system, especially when you've got such an important run of games coming up, when you're still in the thick of it. I think that could be a risk. And we saw what happened with Nancy. Granted, very different, very extreme changes. It wasn't just a shape change, it was a whole tactical overhaul. It was something completely different. But I keep getting asked the question, should we do this? Should we change to this formation, that formation? And I've always been like, I'm not totally against it. I would just be very, very weary of doing it. But I've now arrived at the point, and especially after last night, where I'm going, why are we insisting with this midfield three? Because no matter what the three is, it doesn't seem to work. And in fact, this season, what it's felt like has been a number of times where Celtic fans have went, that's it, that's the three that works. Then 2 games later, it doesn't work, and then it's the next midfield. Oh, that's it, that's the midfield three works. So, there was Hatate, McGregor, and Engels at a point. People were like, that's it, that's the perfect balance. We've got to keep that. 2 games later, Hatate's off the boil, rubbish, can't do it. Then Negrin comes in, scores a couple of goals, midfield three. That's the perfect balance, fantastic. And now it doesn't. So we've insisted on this set three of a midfield all season. It's clearly not working. I think that Benjamin Negrin, for example, who scores a great goal last night, very weird player, very, very weird player, can't quite get to grips with him. I think he's suffering in the role he's getting asked to play. He's not athletic enough for it, he's not fast enough for it, he's a very slow player that relies a lot on his technical ability, which I don't think he's getting to show when he's shoehorned over to that kind of right-hand side of the midfield three. So we've arrived at a point, especially in Europe, which won't matter beyond next week, when I'm thinking, why are we insisting and going forward with this midfield three? I think something has to change, Quinny, in my opinion.
Oh, big time. And it's good to highlight the cohesion that you see from a Stuttgart, because again, a lot of the teams that we kind of look at and think the grass is greener, or look at how good that club is doing, so often is the case that they either have a manager that has been in place for a couple of seasons and you've got that kind of synergy, that kind of harmony kind of chapping through, or if it doesn't come from the manager, there's a club type of philosophy, I suppose is the word for it, that reigns true in there. And for some reason, like, Brendan Rodgers wanted Calum McGregor to become Pirlo or something like that, and ever since then he's played in that position. And on my channel I normally refer to him as the centre of gravity in the team, because that's kind of the way it is. Like, nothing happens without McGregor's say so or touching the ball. And I agree, and I'm sure everyone else would, he's the best player in the team, he's the most capable midfielder of any job that you could probably ask to do. Mm-hmm. And again, I think everyone would agree he is absolutely wasted taking the ball off of centre-backs all day and pointing at the goalkeeper what full-back to pass to. He should... Again, you look at the boy Stiller, I think it's the third goal or the second goal, he starts off in between the centre-backs, and the way their team is built, without going into it all too much, right, but he's basically kind of freed up, and he kind of goes everywhere. He ends up on the right wing position, and he's the one that crosses it in for El Canus when he runs in. Mm-hmm. McGregor should be doing that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a season. I know last year he had a bit of a purple patch with some of the goals he scored. I think it was his best scoring record for a season, and there was maybe a bit of progress getting made that way. But I think every time you see Callum McGregor in the final third for us, there was a good clip of it in the last couple of matches where he overlapped out in the left wing for Negren, I think it was, before the ball came back inside for somebody. Every time McGregor's in the final third, something good happens. Between him saying, I'm not going up there, it's not my job, or the manager telling him, you do what you want, you're the captain, we're wasting him. And like I mentioned before, he's not getting better in this position. It's not as if he's growing into it and like, oh, I've now played defensive midfield for 5 years, so now I'm not just good at taking balls off centre backs, but I'm good at driving through the park once in a while, or I'm good at, switching and hitting the wide player. So anyway, the system thing kind of sets McGregor up for that, because I think McGregor, his biggest strength and his biggest weakness are probably one and the same thing, and that is like he is completely obedient, I think, to managers and coaches. Like he is like the lieutenant, he is like the teacher's pet. Maybe is probably a poor expression, but maybe
I think you can always kind of see that. Like, when there's like moments where he gets called to the sideline, and it was the same when Nancy was here. There was never any people like, he's got to challenge Nancy, he's got to say that won't work, or blah blah, and it was never really any of that. It was a kind of like, yes, captain, and then he'd move back off to the pitch.
Yeah, and I think when people are just like, or when that's the relationship, nobody's going to, and like you say, there's just no pushback, there's no kind of, maybe Brendan tried to get a bit of that out of him with the goal return that we got the year before, but I think he really needs somebody to tell him, like, you are a playmaker, you are somebody that goes between the lines, and I don't think anyone's telling him that at all, other than maybe that kind of moment or two from Brendan. And that in itself is something. We then don't really have a defensive midfielder, so you're maybe then creating a problem by trying to get him further up the pitch, whatever, fine. But like you say originally, the tactics, the system, the philosophy, how we build the midfield, how even we plan on scoring goals, it's not any different to what it was under Rodgers, what we seen last night. And as we're talking about it, I remember Martin O'Neill's first game, his very first game, right? And anyone who's listening, feel free to go and check the analysis I did on it. I think it was Falkirk we were playing, and literally every time, and it's in the highlights very well as well, but literally every time we won the ball, within 3 passes we were on the box of Falkirk. Every time. It was almost like clockwork. It was almost like a deliberate instruction, within 3 passes we need to be shooting or about to cross in, and it was a breath of fresh air. It was direct football. It was Martin O'Neill, and ever since then it's just sloped away to nothing. Whereas last night I'm looking at that and it just looks like Rodgers' ball all over again, and it's like,
it's kind of slowly reverted back to the staleness that we were seeing, August, September, October time, innit?
Yeah, there's no urgency, there's no direction. Like with Stuttgart, like we were chatting about there, like they had a clear plan of, our 4 attackers are going to sit on the Celtic's back 4, and then again, without going into the weeds about it all, they were doing some interesting ways of getting the ball for them, and then when they know the plan, when the ball gets to there, we come to life. We're going to run here, we're going to look for 1-2s, and they come into the game with 100% the game plan of shoot on sight. Even if it's from the edge of the box, don't let the keeper set his feet. You look at the goals we've conceded this year. Shots from outside the box hit the back of the net recently, and the goalkeepers, I'm sure, are topics that will be brought up as well. But they knew how to get to the final third, and then they knew how to test the keeper. And with us, we don't know how to get to the final third. Last thing I'll say on this, right, but Tam did really well in the opening stages of the game, like you kind of mentioned before. Like we did well, and a lot of that was going to him in the air, and he was getting his shirt pulled really badly. And every time the ball broke down, you would see him shouting or pointing at whoever played the ball, and he was saying, in the channel, run, I want it on the ground. He wants to spin and run in the channel. It only happened twice, but we had a huge opportunity to exploit them. The striker was telling you, like, I've got this guy, he's grabbing my shirt, I've got the channel here, play me up here and get some people around me. It happened twice, and I think we played about 6 or 7 balls to him like that. It took us ages to suss on what he wanted, it took us ages to read the game, and then even when we were doing it, Negren, like you say, he's closer to the goalkeeper, than he is, because he's out of position, and then Tam's running up the pitch, he's getting nobody to help him. I'm just kind of ranting in different directions now, sorry, but...
No, I think you're reading my mind. You must be reading my mind, because the next... when you were finishing up on the Calum McGregor stuff, I was like, the next thing I was going to talk about was Big Tam and the striker situation, because just to kind of revert back to what I was saying, always been against people go, right, it's time to switch to 4-4-2, and I'm always kind of like, right, steady. We don't need to suddenly start going 4-4-2 just because we're going through this, right? But once again, similar vein to what I'm saying about the midfield three and how that balance isn't being found and how that midfield three is just not working. I also can't help but shake the feeling that over the course of this season, right, up front, it's just not been working. It's not been working. And actually, the most chances that we've managed to create happen to be for Johnny Kenny, who would miss them left, right, and centre. For some reason, we've now got a striker in. We're not creating the same amount of chances. He's not getting even half the chances that Kenny was getting. But it seems to be a recurring theme over the course of the year that we've just struggled with this lone striker up top. And I think last night, for example, Chwanchara, who would try, was often getting forced, and this is maybe from my perspective where I sit in the stadium, but especially in the second half, shooting into the other end, I would notice that the defenders were easily kind of taking him on the dribble away from goal. He was finding it very, very difficult to get between the goalposts. That area where you want your striker to be. You want it to be, boom, bang, front goals, square and centre of it. But they kept dragging him wide, they kept getting him wide, and because it was, a lot of the times it's because there was nobody up in support with him, and generally because there's no other really natural finisher floating around there. You've got Maida way tucked over on the left, you've got the other winger, Yang, whoever it is, on the right, still tracking back, or still coming forward. And I just can't help but feel that this one striker it's just not working, and we're actually seeing the likes of Chwanchara struggle because of it. I'm sitting here at my point saying, at this point going, well, it's not necessarily like we need to go 4-4-2, but I think that there is maybe a case to sit and say a striking partner would be desired, and maybe you can play about with that, because whatever we're going to do with this between now and the end of the season, well, it's clearly flawed.
I think when it comes to that, like we've been 4-4-2 kind of off the ball for like a couple of since Brendan's came back. Hatate and Maeda you would often see looking like a front two at times, pressing teams, particularly in Europe. And I think that's probably Negren's best position, is being that second striker, that kind of one off the front, because he can maybe come into midfield a bit to receive deeper. Bit of shouts for Adamu and Big Tam to get a shout together as a front two. Kelechi came off the bench last night, so I wouldn't be against that in terms of that as a move. I don't think it's too much of a departure, is kind of what I'm getting at, from what we've been playing anyway. So I don't think you really need to rewrite the script, and 4-4-2 is like level 1 football, so I'm sure all the players should be able to, you know what I mean, like
should have done it at some point.
Yeah, like surely like they can get to grips with their job and whatever for that. But in terms of the one striker thing, I think it's we've actually been kind of cursed and blessed all at once, because all of our strikers that we've had since really Ange and beyond, and I'm maybe being a wee bit harsh on some of them, so forgive me for being a wee bit too kind of bird's eye view.
This is the whole point in this channel, mate, is to be as harsh as you bloody like.
But to keep it kind of bird's eye view, they were like almost one trick ponies, or they were like very much like this type of player. Like Kyogo was like a wee fast running guy. Giakoumakis, a bit more of a fox in the box target man. Oh, maybe somewhat of a Giakoumakis type, so on and so forth. They're all kind of like their thing. And I remember games, you've watched them, we've all watched them, where you go 60, 70 minutes and we've got Kyogo in the box and we're crossing it, and he's got 4 defenders to try and outjump and it goes nowhere. And then we bring on Giakoumakis, and then what do? We start playing balls down the channel for him to run onto and start to press. And so there's a bit of that where we've never really had the right guy in the right match at the right time quite often, it feels like, and that's why we're always moaning about, oh, I should have started this guy and he's not good enough and whatever. But so I think number one, if we had a better kind of all-round forward, you maybe feel that a bit less, because as much as that Big Tam last night, he wants to take the ball into a channel and go for a run with it, like you pointed out, he wasn't really going to get much joy by himself. He kind of needed a bit of a team around him, and he's kind of limited there. It's kind of like the only way he can get into the game. And I think we've really struggled with having strikers that can only kind of do one thing. Like Maeda up front cannot receive the ball in a space, for example, you know, and all of our strikers have kind of gave us limitations on how we can play. And again, it just kind of feeds into that frustration I mentioned a moment ago, how like the midfield don't just get a grip of the game for a minute and go, right, well, we're only going to get the ball into him from the channel. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get together and I'll be in this space, you be there, and we'll get the ball from him. And once we do that, boom, we're out. There's none of that. It's just constantly like reset, go back to where we were and trust the process.
Trust the process. It feels like we've had to go with it. That's been the kind of mantra at Celtic for what feels like an eternity at this stage. It's very frustrating, and I think you could sit here and talk for days about, you know, what we could do differently systematically and what areas of the pitch could do this or that. Ultimately, I think a lot of it will just come back to the whole, is the right quality there right now? Do we have the players to start experimenting? And the answer typically seems to be no. So I guess everybody will have differing opinions when it comes to that, but I think the one thing, and this is the last thing I'm going to say about kind of system, tactics and whatnot, and I don't want to get too bogged down about next season when we've still got a league title to win, but you talked a lot about, getting the ball into channels and maybe hitting a target man. One thing we can't do is hit anybody for a bloody set piece. Quinny, I didn't get touched my video last night because it slipped my mind. It's getting ridiculous. Like, it's actually horrifying to watch every set piece. I mean, there was that one that Paulo Bernardo hits in the first half. I don't know if you remember the one I'm talking about. Oh yeah. My, like, and it's like this is happening every week now. We have no threat. You're in a European game where it's notorious for the underdog to score goals from set piece scenarios, from crosses, from ricochets, from winning the second ball. We have free kicks and crossing areas. Somehow we've ended up passing it back to Kasper Schmeichel. So that needs to be rectified. And I put up a tweet during the game yesterday, probably whilst very emotive on the subject. But I genuinely think I meant it when I said it, that for me in this summer, a set piece coach or somebody that has at least set piece needs to be up there on the same sort of pedestal as a manager, because this has been going on for years. That can't go on much longer.
Totally. I was laughing there because I kind of forgot to mention this in my own content, so I'm glad you brought it up. But I actually heard Neil Lennon say the crossing was bad, and that's normally something that we're very good at. Since
when? But maybe I'm trying to think. Maybe it was okay when he was last at the club. I remember obviously Christopher Jullien scores the big League Cup final goal, etc., etc. Maybe it was good then, but unless I've been under a rock for the last 5 years, I still remember even under Ange, who was the saviour, and we all love him. Set pieces were still terrible. They were still bad. I remember us having a real struggle with corners, and I remember like Stephen Welsh scoring a goal for a corner kick or something. And I was like, oh my god, the fact that we've had to wait for Stephen Welsh to score a header for a corner kick sums it all up. Like, that's nuts. I don't know what Neil Lennon's been watching, but it's not the same Celtic as I have, Quinny.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that. So I just had that wee flashback when you mentioned it there. But I remember the Bernardo ball, I thought that was terrible. And yeah, like set pieces, a set piece coach, really should be high on the agenda. And again, maybe it's a wee bit too arty-farty or whatever, but I'm a wee bit more of a fan of like a throw-in coach for a team like us.
Right, okay.
Set pieces and corners and all that are dead important, and we need to do better at it, don't get me wrong. But see, the thing with throw-ins that is, obviously it's became a bit of a currency in England, throw-in coaches and that kind of thing. But the one thing with throw-ins, not long throw-ins and turning them into corners, but see the throw-ins in and around the middle of the pitch. I used to do a bit of coaching and stuff like that. And for me, like throw-ins, it's one of the most controllable situations on the pitch where you can really take it from a training ground into a game and go, this is exactly how we're going to set up, this is where the ball will be, and you can actually plan on getting the ball somewhere with it. And like, I don't think we've ever thought about that once, ever. Like everything's a gamble, and we're up the line or back there or whatever. And like, how many throw-ins is there a game? Like 60 or something like that. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I mean the amount that we get in Scotland, and we don't put them to use. And I get it. Some people, even for a long time, I've always been kind of traditionally one of these people that's like, I'm not a stats and analysis guy, but there is certain lines that I will certainly acknowledge, and set piece coaching being one of them, that you need to evolve in this game. You have to keep up with the times, and you have to approach the game as effectively as you possibly can. And one of the things that has been done effectively, what seems that many clubs around Europe right now, is the utilisation of something as common as a throw-in. Yet when it comes to us, we've got players that don't know what to do with them, we're wasting time with them. And if you kind of nail something or drill something out of these set pieces, the numbers are going to go up. As I said, I'm not a big statistical or analytical guy, but I know that I want to read charts that say Celtic are creating 10 times more chances than they currently are, and a lot of that can come through throw-ins, and you'll know that fine well.
Yeah. So I think that should be a big priority for the club in some way, because philosophy and tactics and all that to one side, like you say, even just knowing how we score from corners, knowing how we can score from a deep free kick, knowing how we're going to defend if we're against a team like Stuttgart that put their whole team into the box, or how we're going to defend against Motherwell who only put 4 guys into the box, just to make stuff up for an example, And like with so much stuff, when I'm watching the team on the pitch, it is figuring it out as it happens. There's very little that seems like pre-prepared or brought to the table beyond fitness.
And I think a big element of it as well is, and maybe this does get spoke about online sometimes, but I feel like it's very underspoken about. These set pieces, these throw-ins, even if you don't score from them, the lift that you get, see if you hit the bar, or a shot or a header goes narrowly wide, and then you get that lift for the crowd. We're not getting that. What we're getting is groans when we inevitably watch the ball work its way back to the centre half of the goalkeeper from what looked like a promising area of the pitch to win a free kick. So if you suddenly exchange, people talk about the atmosphere a lot last night, and maybe that'll come up in the Q&A section of the show, right? But people talk a lot about the atmosphere. What would help massively is if we were creating more chances, getting close to goal, rather than ended up shoehorning the ball, horseshoeing the ball around. I just know for a fact that I would love to see it up taking chances rather than, you know, the same old recycled crap that you spoke about we were saying maybe at the start of the season. But
yeah, totally.
Anyway, God, there's so much we could talk about football wise. As I said, I don't want to keep us here all day. In terms of bigger picture, Quinny, it's another disappointing night in what has been the frustrating modern history of Celtic in Europe. Another year where Celtic won't win a knockout tie. And I seen a great point this morning about how, and people can exaggerate it as much as they like, or they can downplay it as much as they like, but I do agree with this. I actually want to read it verbatim because I thought it was a fantastic tweet. You might not agree with it, Quinny, but I certainly did. And the tweet was basically saying that Celtic are on a sort of Anderlecht type trajectory right now that has been clear since the minute Tony Bloom entered the league. The 49ers have walked into Scottish football, and the rate of the descent has actually been quite impressive, as long as maybe Dermot Desmond's here and a few of the dinosaurs that are existing in the boardroom of the club. It feels like we are on a sort of Anderlecht Manchester United type trajectory where we've enjoyed our successes, we've done what we've done. Now that the modern guys are here, we're just going to be left in the background. I can't help but shake that feeling. People might say, that's a bit of a stretch. What if we go on and win the league? What if we go on and win the Scottish Cup? Great, that's good. But I yearn for more than that. I know thousands yearn for more than that. And there's very little evidence being provided that we're actually taking things seriously on a grander scale. It's another disappointing year, and it leaves you wondering how do we even kind of turn the ship around?
The Anderlecht comparison is wildly on point, by the way, because when I grew up, Anderlecht was the only team from Belgium that ever made the Champions League. We played them once or twice, I'm pretty sure. And, you know, USG, until like 4 years ago, as most people know, or 5 years ago, they were a tier 2 side. They'd never been in the top tier before. And Club Brugge were about always, but they weren't who people talk about them now as. You know, that's very much smart guys in the room have kind of got them an edge and overtaken Anderlecht, for example. And that's very on point, actually. Great kind of thing there. And, you know, I kind of got a wee bit of attention in the Celtic fan community a few months ago for like... I said on May, when Hearts appointed McInnes, I was like, Hearts will finish second. They will leapfrog Rangers now. No doubt about it in my mind. And that was like my prediction at the time was Hearts will finish second. They're going to come good with Tony Bloom. But I was also thinking at the time, this could be brilliant, because if you do have Tony Bloom coming in here and spending, you know, 3 brown pennies and a packet of crisps on a team, and then he can like beat us and challenge us for stuff, surely that would wake the club up to embracing that sort of stuff themselves. Obviously it's went a step further than that, and you find it hard to imagine that they're not, you know, waking up to the, you know, smell the roses or whatever that expression is. But we spent nothing in January. We spent zero in January. Like, and again, I listened to like 5 or 6 versions of Martin O'Neill's post-match last night, and one of them is a kind of it's like a little sentence embedded in sentences when he's talking. But he says, when he's ranting about European finances and stuff, he says we can spend zero, you know. So I don't know what to make of that as a wee kind of flippant comment. Maybe there's a wee Freudian slip in there. Maybe it's just an expression in the whole European landscape of £80 million subs in the Premier League and whatever. But we spent nothing. You know what I mean? So nothing. To be behind Hearts, level 1 points for Rangers at the I can't remember, but we were third for a minute. We spent zero. And again, that was one of the things, I may be taking us off topic a wee second, but that was one of the things about O'Neill's comments that really set me off. He says in every one of them, not right now, but in the near future, or in the future, or in time, Celtic will go deep in European competitions. And honestly, like, I don't know where he can get that from. Like, we spent nothing in January. We had Bayern Munich in the knockouts last year. We had Brendan as manager. We've won 99% of trophies for the last 15 years. We spent nothing in the summer. Like, how much more do we need to make it okay to spend money? Like, surely that was the window where you buy the title, you Man City up a bit, you know, and flex that muscle and go, right, we're going to spend some money, we're going to fix these problems, and we're going to win the league, and we'll get back into the Champions League. And then you could make a comment like that. We brought in 4 guys on loan one that we tried to buy and now who we don't want to play at all, and another guy on loan who I think we've sold a rubber duck to, you know, who came up and was like, oh, I'm the next Van Dijk and I'm going to play. Now, like,
it's crazy because you brought up the VUCA stuff there. If we did spend money in January, we were about to ship 3 million on a guy whose Celtic career was done after 45 minutes. Like, this is... I not to cut you off, Quinny, I know you were in the middle of a fantastic...
I need cut off.
You were fantastic there, by the way. I agree with every single word. I think it was great. But I didn't agree with a lot of what he said last night. The great Stan Petrov, who was on TNT last night for the coverage, I didn't agree with a lot of what he said. But there was a wee line, and you talked about a kind of embedded line in what Martin O'Neill was saying. There was a wee line where Stan Petrov said that Celtic is becoming, or the club is becoming, an ordinary club. And that kind of maybe paraphrased a lot of what I was saying last night, like where the standards have slipped so much that I think we've lost what actually Celtic is. In terms of 60,000 seater venues or teams that host 40, 50, 60,000 people every week, Celtic are slipping to the bottom of the pile of what it means to be a club that size. And that's because our standards have slipped to the point where our signings are, our club is becoming either A second chance place for players who are on their arse, who are duds, and probably have no other chance of saving their career, or B, a retirement home. So the likes, and I mean it with all due respect to Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, by the way, who has been so far solid, everybody's enjoying it, great. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain was on my shopping list on the 1st of January, or was he on my shopping list at the start or the top of the summer last year. And nobody should be kidding themselves on that he was either, no matter how well he does. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain was never a name that we were talking about going out and signing. It's the same with Kasper Schmeichel, it's the same with a lot of these other older guys. We have got to a point where it's duds, loans, and retirement home type signings. That's the standard now. We are becoming so ordinary. I think we've lost what it is to be Celtic, and what we are is we're just trying to kind of bobble along the way. And that is exemplified in losing 4-1 to the side who are very good, but haven't spent billions. They're the 4th best team in Germany, and you know, 20 years ago we were able to challenge with them. And we could talk about the changing, the gulf that's expanded between teams in European football. Celtic, I think, have also manufactured their own gulf. Because not to keep using the same, and I'm so tired of going on about, look at Bodo, oh, look at these guys, look at what they've done. But genuinely, if these clubs can somehow do it, Celtic can as well, especially when we're producing revenue streams that are better than most clubs around Europe. So I think that we could talk about the changing gulf in Europe and the money, but I think this Celtic board have also manufactured their own gulf that is purely down to them.
Agreed. I think too many of them are kind of stuck in the past on that note, in terms of like what is possible, what the landscape looks like, finances and everything. But I also think it's really a great kind of example of, if you are not ambitious, you don't have a goal, you don't just go nowhere, but you'll go backwards, you know. And when you listen to the club, like, they cannot say what their goals and their ambitions are out loud, because it quite simply is Rangers plus 1 point, you know, and they cannot say that out loud. And when you don't actually have a goal or an ambition, this is sport, you know. It's not just like a regular business in the high street. Just make sure the lights are on, make sure there's money in the till, make sure the wages are paid. You know, it's sport. It's about achievement. It's about progress. And if you're not aiming to move forward, and like I say, you don't just stand still, but you move backwards. And our club has got not one scintilla of initiative to, like, see when Rangers went. Honestly, it was the biggest open goal situation in the history of Celtic. And I'm sure, like, I don't remember explicitly, but I'm pretty sure, Ryan, you'd have been very much on my train of thought back then, in the case of, you could cruise the league, and then, do you know what? See, with the money that you do spend, let's put all our eggs in the European basket. Let's be one of those teams that rest your whole team between European matches and really, like, try and have a wee go here and there. Old format, how far would you have gotten? Not very, right? Fine, whatever. But we didn't even do that. You know what I mean? Where you can maybe try and build a bit of a legacy, a wee bit of a momentum, a wee bit of a continuity over time. And now we're at a situation where it maybe feels like the club are waking up and want to do something like that. But you now need to beat Rangers and Hearts for the spots. And you need to actually spend money. You can't get away with, because there is pressure to win and to do well because of the competition domestically. You can't, we'll try a wee Armstrong and a wee Mackay Stevens, see how they do. There's no room for that anymore. So huge opportunity is gone and by, and I think now, like, any ambition that they do have is manufactured, and it's really just out of self-preservation rather than, you know, it's like, wait, especially with what you do, Ryan, it's very much something that someone is a self-starter. Like, you need to do everything. You need to decide to do it. You need to make it happen. And if you've not got that in you, and I'm sure these guys do for, like, you know, counting beans and balancing spreadsheets and, you know, sending faxes or whatever. But see, if they've not got that bit of, I want Celtic to be better tomorrow than what they are today, then you're not going to get it. And see, if there's not anyone in that club that doesn't have it, then no, that's probably why we're here, because nobody has that. Nobody goes into work today thinking, I want today to finish better than it starts, or I want tomorrow to be better than what it was today, kind of thing. It's just, cool, did we win the league? Did we win the Scottish Cup? Did we win more games against Rangers than we lost? Cool, forget about it, move on, you know.
As you worded it, mate, we're keeping the lights on, and that's what I think that the last 10 years especially, how the equivalent to keeping the lights on was just making sure we went through our domestic dominance, and beyond that, you know, it's been, let's get lucky. And you brought up Rangers a moment ago. We keep banging on about Bodo, we keep banging on about all these European clubs, when there was a side in the same city who went to the Europa League final 4 years ago. So, you know, the proof is in the pudding that if you get something right, if you put some effort in and whatnot, you can do it. And I'm not saying that Rangers went to dramatic lengths to get to that Europa League final. It's not like they spent millions and they had this tactical mastermind. Like, I think a lot of that just came through real hard work and probably some tactical smarts from the manager at the time. But they still done it, and we've no got close. So, as you said, it's all getting very routine. It's all getting very tedious. And Honestly, Quinny, I don't know how many more years I can take it before I totally lose my marbles. I was this close this year, mate.
Well, I heard you saying pre-game that I can't remember what the stipulation was, but if something happened, you're going to cut up your season book.
Yes, aye. Was it maybe talk about Schmeichel starting on Sunday?
It might have been your reaction video.
I think it was my reaction video, because I remember at the time as I was editing it, I forgot what I said, and all I heard was, I swear to God, if Schmeichel starts on Sunday, I will cut. And I was like, oh my God, I've not said what I think I'm going to say here ever. I was like, oh no, I said season ticket, thank God. Right, very quickly before we do the Q&A, because we've done well, Quinny, here. We're talking loads. Kasper Schmeichel should actually be spoken about before I do the Q&A. Dropped another terrible game last night. I didn't want to do it at the top of the show because I think we've all spoke to death about Kasper Schmeichel, and our points are probably all getting a wee bit repetitive. There has to be major question marks over his position as number one between now and the end of the season. It's getting bad, really bad, actually.
As I think, like the situation with it really is, it's got to the point of maybe being untenable, because there's been these, since the injury picked up with Denmark, there's been these whispers and these rumours and these feelings and wee bit of evidence here and there that his left shoulder's cooked, he can't go to his left and this and that, and it's been something that, oh yeah, we've kind of seen it with that goal, or maybe not with that one, but the longer time's going on, it very much looks like that's the case. The one thing that's not really been in question has been his conditioning, or, you know, his physical appearance, you know, is probably the way of putting it.
You're putting it nicely.
Well, when you put both those two things together, if he has a bum shoulder and is saying, I'm fine to play, and if he's saying, I can still get around the goal and spring up and have fast reflexes, when we're really seeing week on week more and more proof that he can't, then, you know, the booing, like, I'm undecided. I'm undecided with how I feel about it. Because with the not booing thing, like, I agree with everything that everyone says about the not booing thing. But when it comes to, like, him actually being booed, if his shoulder is cooked, he's a goalkeeper that needs his arms. If his shoulder,
arguably the most vital part of his body.
Yeah. And if he's putting himself above the team and above everything else to say, I'm fine to play, I want to retire the World Cup, I'm not going to retire against Ross County or whatever, then that maybe deserves some booing. That's what I'm not too sure about, to be honest with you, because that's not a guy playing bad, or like Johnny Kenny, a guy that we can all see is maybe not ready for the level. That's like someone...
It's selfish. That's what it is. It's very selfish. And, like, I'll be stunned if he plays at the World Cup. The only chance I can see him getting is like a charity game in match day 3 if they're already through to the next round. I really can't see him starting. There's other Danish goalkeepers who must be better than Kasper Schmeichel this season. But no, you're bang on the money. The thing with me with the booing is, right, I'm not going to sit here and pretend. I did not boo him personally last night. I did shout a world of abuse at him. So maybe they equate, maybe these things, level out. But I didn't boo him. I've never really booed a Celtic player.
I did the sarcastic cheer.
The sarcastic cheers, absolutely fine. I think we've all been prone to that, you know. But I didn't boo him personally, but not for a second would I get off at any. I wouldn't moan at anybody for booing him, because after what we've been served up this season, I can't blame fans. Like, people say, oh, it's Rangers behaviour, it's this or that, and I'm like, well, that could be true to an extent, whatever you choose to believe, but I've watched a guy single-handedly cost Celtic games, big moments, because of very poor goalkeeping. And the thing we always get told is, I remember a few years ago there would always be the debates when Celtic were doing really well, and it was like 10-15 minutes to go and people would start flooding at the stadium. Somebody would go online and be like, it's terrible, fans are flooding at the stadium, why he's leaving 10-15 minutes early? And people would always reply saying, I've paid my money, it's my ticket, I'll do as I please. I guarantee that the same people saying you can't boo Kasper Schmeichel are the same ones that would be writing the comments saying, you know, it's my money, I'll do as I please. If you want to boo him, I don't have a problem with it. I can understand why people are doing it. I think that it's just bad that we've allowed it to get to this point, Quinny. I think this is something that should have been discussed well before now to stop it from reaching such a point of toxicity.
Yeah, completely. Again, Martin Neal kind of was asked about it incessantly in the post-match. Didn't really come out and say anything more than Schmeichel's been a good keeper for me and all the rest of it. So I don't know about Hibs, but I'm fairly sure Sinisalo plays Stuttgart next week. And then thereafter, really, who knows? But Hibs, I'm kind of up in the air with, because, and again, you maybe remember this, but see if Wilfred Nancy didn't get sacked today, he got sacked. If Nancy got one more game, Schmeichel would have been dropped, because Schmeichel was terrible at that end bit for Nancy. But Schmeichel kind of got a wee second chance at it, because O'Neill came back in, and O'Neill's not going to drop him for Nancy form, you know, like. But now that's kind of came back again, you know, because he can't keep away Father Time forever, can you? So it is one of these ones where it is at an impasse. Hibs, I'm not sure. We'll see what happens, but it feels that way. Like, if Martin O'Neill's serious about it, this is a big decision. You know, you've got to be. You know, like, big but. So I said about Nancy. Nancy was never going to drop Schmeichel. Imagine being him coming into Celtic and going, "You're dropped." Like, just
the most senior member of the side. That's it, yeah. Right? You're off. So listen, it's huge. It's a huge decision. But I think it's a decision that now needs to be made for the betterment of the entire squad and club. Things aren't getting better. We've got a league title on the line, and I think that's my final words. And I'll let you finish up your final words in a minute on it, Connie. But my final words on it is, if there is genuinely a league title to be won, which I think you could dispute right now if we even have a chance, genuinely think you can dispute it. But if you truly believe that there's a league title to be won, and I guess we all still do think there is, you've got to play the players that are going to help you win it. And right now, Schmeichel just doesn't look as though he's going to be part of that.
Yeah. I'm kind of sitting there right now as well with you. I just think, especially with Stuttgart, you know, shots from outside the box, we can't defend them and we can't save them. Yeah, like, so it's a big handicap to go into games with, you know.
Well, listen, I'm sure there's plenty of questions about Kasper Schmeichel in the Q&A. I'll run through a few of them to round us off for the show. We got a lot of replies for a last minute announcement that we were doing this episode. We actually got a lot more replies than I thought we would. We'll start with Connor. We'll try and battle through them very quickly. Connor says, not really a question, but I feel like this has been our worst season since the turn of the millennium, and the board continue to sit on their hands and let the support tear at each other's throats as the season goes down the toilet. Do you think there's any way this can be fixed? And I guess that, you know, one of the bigger talking points within this question is, it does feel like there is almost, especially online, I don't feel it's much in the ground, but online there seems to be a kind of Celtic civil war, and I think that's what the board have been looking for, in all honesty. I think they're enjoying this. I think they like that we're at each other's throats. Can it be fixed? My answer is, of course it can. We've seen it fixed in the past. It's, you know, bygones are always bygones at some point, but right now there is such a point of toxicity, Quinny, that makes you question it.
I think it could all get turned around very quickly, and there's only one or two things that could achieve that. I think if we woke up tomorrow and Michael Nicholson had resigned and the Green Brigade were reinstated, I think everything would turn on its head instantly. Yeah. Like, no doubt instantly. Instantly. So, can it be saved? I definitely think it could be. Now, there's maybe one or two other things that could happen that could get you somewhat close to that kind of euphoria or that nirvana I just laid out for you a moment ago. But I'm not too sure how many of them are really that likely, because it does take some big boy decisions and it does take some big announcements. It's not just, oh, the Green Brigade are back. You said it last night. This is one of the things you said last night I really wanted to give you a shout out for on my own video, and I forgot, so apologies. No worries. I think should be given refunds for something.
Oh, you know absolutely. 100%.
You know, like it's been terrible this year. Half be on season books or the Europa game last night or a shirt for Celtic should be doing something. You know what I mean? And we're so far away from anything material, whether it be like Nicholson resigning or some sort of real leadership moment of Dermot Desmond coming out and maybe saying, like, I'm going to actually not wreck this anymore. I'm going to give it to someone else that can do it or something. Then can it be rescued on the football pitch is probably where I come to next. It probably just about can, but like Martin Neal keeps saying, there is no margin for error. We're going to need to keep getting last minute winners. We're going to keep needing getting to Netke with a wee screamer here and there to get you off your seat and get you feeling good about the team again. Yeah, there's not too much else I don't think could do it.
No, 100%. I agree with everything you're saying. The stuff about refunds I felt very passionate about last night, and I just can't believe after 5% ticket rises and everything else, no benefits to your season book, this is what we've been served up, and they're going to end the season going, oh, that was grand, right, we'll see you next year. That's how it's going to go, and it's quite frankly sickening. But another podcast for another day. Thank you for bringing it up though, Quinny, I do appreciate that. This is really deep, this question, but you are starting to see maybe some minor signs of it on social media. Shithead, who's asked this, what a username. Shithead has asked, in particular with Schmeichel keeping his place in the team, if he was to keep being selected, he was to continue to cost us, how long do you think it would take for fans to turn on Martin O'Neill for that decision? Because it feels like a lot of people after his comments last night, which we won't get into too much, are maybe turning on O'Neill slightly. Just because, and I wouldn't, do you know what, I want to rephrase that. I wouldn't say turning on O'Neill, but very, very annoyed at how he's went about saying things and how he's worded things. I think it would take a lot to actually turn on O'Neill, but there will be a point, I think, where if decisions kept getting made that are questionable, people will go, well, what's going on here?
Yeah, you definitely felt a little bit of the direction towards O'Neill kind of changed last night, because he was coming out with some amount of AGM mantra.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, definitely.
And that's just...
Very
after
controlled
the game,
feeling to it, didn't it? It had a very kind of like Dermot Desmond had gave him a sheet beforehand and said, you say that, see you later, son.
Yeah. And off the back of the performance we had, not spending money in January, it was just all so well misplaced. How long would it take the fans to turn on O'Neill for keeping Schmeichel in the net? I think one more big calamity. And it would, you know, we're at the point now of no return. I think we all agree that Hibs is maybe a bit like, who knows what will happen. But see at Hibs, if he does, then it is unequivocally, like, if Martin O'Neill picks him again, I think people would go crazy. Mm-hmm. If he continues to play, unless he plays Hibs, Stuttgart, yeah, I think like you're really looking at a Hearts or Rangers game, and if one of those go against us, because that at that point could be season ending, then any appearance thereafter, yeah, it would be in all directions. I think the anger.
Yeah, I think that it's just you're playing with fire ultimately. Like the fans are in a position right now where you're not going to get a unanimous response to things that you say or do. It's because we are so split. I think I'll touch on my opinions very quickly on the O'Neill stuff, because I know people will be asking me, and even though I don't really want to get into it, because no matter how you try and go around it, you're going to piss off people. People are either going to think that you're lambasting O'Neill or sucking up to O'Neill. You can't win. And my opinion is, and I said this to you before we went on recording this, like in the year 2026, you can't simply go, I disagree with someone anymore. Because of the state of the world, socially and politically, like any sort of disagreement has to turn into a rammy. But I think it's very fair to say that you disagree with Martin O'Neill after last night. You don't need to go about it in an aggressive manner. You don't need to go about it in a manner that suggests that Martin O'Neill should be hung up the Celtic way or something, or discarded from the club. Like that's a ridiculous extent to go to. But I think it's fair to say I disagree. I disagree with his comments saying that he says that fans need to have their head examined, for example. But I'm not going to sit here and call him every name under the sun because of it. I just simply disagree. And that's an art we've lost as a society. We can't just simply disagree with people now. And I'm sure me and you have disagreed on things, Quinny, or you and other Celtic fans have disagreed on things. Like these do happen. I don't think that the comments were made at the right time or said in the right tone. I think that if he came out and said, for example, I don't agree with the protests, they didn't help us, and left it there, people wouldn't have been as outraged. I just think his choice of wording was maybe a bit too heavy, and that's where I think people are a bit annoyed with him. But he's got a few delicate weeks ahead of him, and you touched on it there. I think that being one major slip up from Kasper Schmeichel could be bad. Let's just leave it at bad. Final question I've got. There's so many, and I thank you to everybody who's got questions in. Quinny, I hope to maybe have you back on before the end of the season. So this one's maybe looking forward a bit too much, but while I do have you here, I guess I'll ask it anyway. Where do we go from here? This is from Drennan, who says, I think we're looking at 90% of the squad not being up to the standards at Celtic. How much of a rebuild can we actually see happening under this current board? Ultimately, where do we go from here?
Now, I don't know.
Is it very dependent on what happens between now and May?
I could see in so many kind of sequence of events, I could see the club buying 12 guys for £3 million each, or something like that in the summer. Like, I may be exaggerating, but I could see an influx of players at, you know, nominal fees here and there, and it will be very much the type and the profile of guys that we've seen over the years anyway. So it's a tough question, because when Martin O'Neill, again, it did feel very scripted. I listened to 5 versions of what he said post-match, and in every one of them he said that European thing, we will go deep in competition. So, you know, like, where is he getting that from? He's obviously not made it up himself, and he's an idiot for believing anyone that said that to him, right, inside the club, right? Just to say that, right, it's probably the worst thing I'll ever say about Martin O'Neill. But if anyone's told him that and he believes them, he is an idiot. But somebody said that, so what have they said? What are they planning? Are they planning on actually getting their act together in something? Or, I don't know. I've got no faith anything good will happen in the summer. You need to appoint a good manager who will then have all the transfer budget to do as they see fit, and then tweak the team, fill the gaps that we've got. And I've got zero confidence that the club has any headway with a manager at this point. I've got zero confidence the club has got any headway with any transfer targets of any description. Even a keeper, which let's rewind to Joe Hart. We knew Joe Hart was retiring, and we didn't sign Kasper Schmeichel until probably the transfer window closed. I think it was not too far.
It was quite. I still remember that we signed him on a Saturday night. I remember it like we signed him
before
on a
pre-season, or something right before a game.
It was right before a game. I was running at my mates. We were running at Calum, who we do the podcast with. We were at Calum's house having a few drinks on a Saturday night, and I remember like somebody just came out for going to the toilet or something into the back garden and was like, "Oh, we've just signed Kasper Schmeichel, by the way." And I was like, "What?" Yeah, like just or what about sign Schmeichel's got to get announced on Monday or something. I was like, "That's very fucking random." But you're right. You know, I think to tie it into your point, you know, in terms of where do we go from here, one of the big things is we need to employ football-minded people to make football-minded decisions. Like, and I agree with you, I don't have a lot of faith for the summer. Like, if we don't win the league this year, I'm going to come out and say it right now, and it might be very reactionary, it might be very premature, but if I was to make an early bet, if Mr. 365, the bookies, had a gun to my head and says, who's winning the league next year? Anybody but Celtic. Because unless we employ the right people to make the right decisions next year, what sort of indications do we have? As you said, Martin O'Neill must have been given some form of indication to come out and make comments like that. But unless we see those happen, those indications actually kind of materialise in front of our eyes this summer, I don't think it goes in a very positive direction at all, Quinny.
No. I think if you're to have a mad, like, fever dream, mad trip on whatever crazy stuff lies around Glasgow these days, you would have a new manager announced in the next month or two.
Yes.
And you would tell that guy, listen mate, we have messed up royally. The fans hate us right now. We need to get them all back on board. And you know what? The team is actually screwed come the summer, because we're losing guys to end a contract. We need to sell some guys that have been here too long. So you've actually got a lot of players to sign. Here's 50 million quid.
Yeah.
Come and talk to us when you're finished.
Yep, 100%.
That's like the absolute magnum opus of like what could be a reality somewhere.
Let me chip in a wee question to finish up then. As I said, hope to maybe have you back home before the end of the season and things will change. If you were making the decision right now, is there anybody, have you been on Seltzer here giving a sort of number one pick for you? Who would be that guy if you could make that decision right now?
My number one pick when Rodgers left was Marco Rose, and I don't think we've ever spoke to him. I don't think he's even been really set up for jobs or anything. Maybe he's not looking for work, I don't know. But I would still maintain he is the sort of guy that should pick up from Brendan Rodgers. If we are a serious club, you know, and we're trying to progress and evolve and move on, we need to go from Brendan Rodgers, who we all kind of think of and hold out as top-end Premier League manager, Leicester, Liverpool. So if we're going to go from that, we need another guy that's in that ballpark. And Marco Rose is probably the best candidate that's around that's anywhere near there. What I do think could and probably will happen is if Ipswich don't get promoted to the Premier League, Kieran McKenna will be here instantly. I don't think that'll be. Yeah, I've got it on.
I'd love it.
I know somebody that works with him, and
Right.
he is a Celtic fan. That's like unequivocal.
Right,
No
there you
two ways
go.
about it. And as
well,
we all know,
he was my number one pick as soon as like Rodgers left. I was like, go and get McKenna.
he was hotly linked to us, and I think we all know from back then that he got like a mega wage off of Ipswich to stay relegated with them when they were in the Prem. So if they don't bounce, he's probably going to have an exit clause, or he'll be ready to leave anyway because he's on mad money in the Championship. So if Ipswich don't go up, I think it almost certainly would be McKenna. But beyond McKenna or just my own personal favourite of Rose, no idea.
I've been holding out for this, like, and it's just based off the last 6 weeks purely, but like I've been holding on to this no chance of happening Michael Carrick. Like, give him a phone call if you're not going to be at Man United next year. Because the way I look at it, right, with Carrick, and it might not be everybody's cup of tea, people might go, flash in the pan with United and all that, but done a good job at Middlesbrough, clearly knows how to set up a team playing good, exciting, attacking football, clearly has an eye for a player. And the way that I look at it is, like, if he's not at Manchester United next year, if he doesn't get the job permanently, right, if he comes to Celtic for 3-4 years, if we were serious and we said, here's money, you can manage the rebuild, blah. If he came here for 3-4 years, won trophies, and the United job opens up in 3-4 years, I think he'd be a shoe-in for it. I think that they'd look at him as a guy that's been here at United before, done the job, won games, knows what it's like. He's also been at a club that is just as big, maybe not just as big, but along the same lines of Manchester United with the demands, the pressure. That's the kind of guy you want. I think he could be a shoe-in for the United job. So I've just been kind of warming up to the idea of that recently, even though there's
I like it.
no chance of it happening. No chance of it happening, mate.
Yeah, no, I like it. I could kind of get behind it. I don't think he would be the first guy to interview, but again,
No,
if,
yeah, definitely.
if like McKenna gets promoted and we don't go for anyone ambitious like a Terzic or a Rose or something like that, it feels like a Celtic appointment. You know, we were linked to Bellamy and Keane.
Definitely
you know,
has that kind of vibe to it, doesn't it? Aye, has that vibe to it. But we'll see. Look, there's a good few months to go. Quinny, I'll wrap things up there for us and let us get on with our Friday nights. Thank you for joining me tonight, mate. I've really appreciated having you on. It was good. It's nice to kind of vent, you could say, just to get it all, you know. It feels
totally,
therapeutic almost.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on, and yeah, as I say, like minds and all that good stuff. So I've had, I don't want to say fun, but I've enjoyed getting some stuff off my chest for you and chatting through some of it with you as well. Hopefully anyone that's listened to this as well has had some sort of a giggle. Hopefully they've not totally raged out through some of it, but
No,
But
I
yeah.
hope no. I'll do I'll link all the Quinny stuff in the link below, in the description below, and do the channel collab and stuff. So go over there, give them support. We'll be back with an episode of the Celtic Thunder, hopefully from Stuttgart next week. Me, Kieran, and Calum will be there. So keep an eye out for that. Until then, everybody, take care of yourself. God bless, and I'll see you all next time.